Hello everybody. One very interesting topic that is of great concern to anybody working in private equity or in industry is just how much you can earn, how much you can win as a bonus or as a carried interest. And so let's have a few words about that. I've looked at some research by different headhunting firms which have been published in the last 5 years. I've talked to industry contacts, and as a result of that, I put together a little bit of information, particularly focused upon Europe, Middle East and Africa, as to what could be the remuneration levels in the private equity industry. So let's start with our first table, where it shows that a partner could earn a base salary of some 300,000 euros, plus a bonus of 350, and at the more junior level, an associate or analyst level might be 90 and 70. So those are kind of averages. Let's look at another ratio. This is a table showing, which is commonly used in the private equity industry, which shows the ratio of the money at work, or that means the carried interest, to the total cash compensation that a person could achieve. And if we look at this, an analyst would receive in carry 3 times the amount of his total cash compensation, going up to partner at about 12 times, as you might imagine. At the more senior levels, that amount is proportionally even more, with a range something like 2 to 5 at the analyst level, and at the partner level a much wider range, something at 10 to 50. So that's the ratio of, say, the carried interest to the total cash compensation you might find in the market. This table shows the compensation based upon the years of private equity experience, and so what I would like to point out is that you may have a prior experience before private equity, but that's not counted in this calculation. This is specific years of experience in private equity, and as you might imagine, the more the experience, the more the earnings. So if we look at it at the bottom end of 0 to 4, the earnings are relatively in the level of 200, and then in the mid-range we go to 3 and 4, and then once we get to over 10 years, we get a higher plateau of earnings right there. One thing we have to bear in mind is that there is a big difference between the amount of compensation you get according to the size of the fund, because these tables that we've just shown are just averages across all funds, going from small funds to mega funds. So I think this is probably one of the most important or our best analytical slides of compensation, which shows how much you can earn depending on the assets under management, therefore according to the size of the fund that's being managed. So for example, if we're talking about a fund size of up to 250 million euros, the total cash compensation of a partner would be 275, an associate 100, which is somewhat on the lower level. And as you go up in fund size, the earnings increase proportionally. I haven't shown funds over 1 billion because there we're more in the range of the mega funds area, but the great majority of private equity firms are in this range, which is indicated in this table you can see. And so that gives you an idea of what kind of earnings you can expect according to the size of the fund. Obviously, one thing to bear in mind is also that the cash earnings will come out of management fees primarily, and so there'll be an absolute limit on the amount of cash earnings that can be paid out, which will be driven by the total amount of the management fee budget, among other things, which will be less the case for the mega funds. Another thing to look at is to try and distinguish the remuneration according to the fund's type of fund. So, as you might imagine, buyout funds pay the most, followed by growth funds and followed by venture funds, particularly on the carried interest side. So that's also a reflection upon the fact that buyout funds are proportionally larger than growth, which are proportionally larger than most venture funds in the market, particularly in Europe. The other thing to bear in mind is, apart from dividing it by size of fund or by type of fund, is by how successful the fund is, so what kind of quartile it is. And what we've done here is we've divided the salaries, the base salary in this particular analysis, according to quartiles. So in the bottom quartile of funds, the bottom quartile, the partner's on 200, the associate's on 75, which is on the low end. If we go up to the top quartile of funds, we can see that the range is quite wide, with the partners on $1.5 million plus and associates on 200, with the middle quartile somewhere in between the two. But notice that the top quartile is way ahead of the other 3 quartiles, which I suppose also reflects the returns the top quartile funds generate compared to the bottom three quartiles. Then finally, let's consider the geographic range of Europe. So if we set the UK as our baseline with 100 and compare the countries such as Germany or Italy, Spain, Portugal, Central Europe, the range falls in this range. So at the bottom end, you have at the partner level 63% of the UK. At the top level, which is Germany, it's 115% of UK, and a similar range for principals and associates. So broadly speaking, Central Europe and Southern Europe is a bit lower. Germany is somewhat higher than the UK, and that probably matches the trend of Germany sort of gradually taking over as the number one destination and hub for private equity in Europe, particularly post-Brexit. So I hope you found this interesting and informative, and I wish you a happy career in private equity.